Yo, what is up, you guys? This is Godson, and I am here with a special guest today. We are talking with Colton. This guy is the King's Cup second place champion. And you guys, we're going to ask him some tips and tricks, and hopefully he can give us some insight on what we can do to become better players. I want to talk about the meta of the game, your experience, and just give us some insight on how was it traveling to Los Angeles and entering the King's Cup tournament? What is your training schedule like, and what do you do? Things like that we want to know so that we can get better at the game and hopefully compete ourselves in these tournaments.
Okay, so I'm originally from Texas, a small rural town near Dallas, and I currently go to UCSD, so in San Diego. I go to college, and I actually just play Clash Royale like on the weekend or whenever I'm done with my work. So it's never been like a full-time thing for me until I just did this tournament. Did well, but so I rode up with a carpool to Los Angeles. I slept the night, and then I came into the tournament. I met up with a couple friends, a couple guys I knew through the game. And I really just went to have fun, but I also knew I was a good player. I mean, I play in like tournaments online, so I've done well before. So I went in and I knew I could probably make the top 64, but as far as making top 8, it was really close and I got in. And then I was just happy to be in, but then I just told myself, just keep on playing your best and see how far you can get. And I went undefeated until the finals, so it worked out pretty well.
Okay, so you went through like different heats. Tell me about like the heats that you went through. How close was it in the matches? What kind of decks did you have to face in there?
Okay, so in the heat system, we started out with around 300 people, and then it was cut in half, and then there was a second heat, and that heat was cut in half, and then by the time we got to the third heat, there were only 64 people remaining, and then we did another tourney. And the top 8 were the ones that made it in. As far as the first and second heats, I only lost, I think, 2 or 3 times in those combined. And I was able to get a big enough lead that I could just stop playing about halfway through because I knew I'd.
All right, so when you get to the top, you just don't even touch the
game.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no point in like risking losing. There's no point to like try to get first. So I would just get up to like. Well, I would get up to like third or second, and then by the end I was like 15th, but it didn't matter because I only needed to be in top 64.
Yeah, so don't even touch it. Okay.
Yeah, but of course, so I mean, mostly what I played Giant and Golem, and then my opponents typically played either one of those or Lava Hound and Hog were the other 2 popular deck archetypes.
Right. So you had to go up against a lot of Lava Hound and Golem decks then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. How many Expo decks did you fight?
Oh, really not that many, just because tanks are in the meta right now. It's hard for Expos to do well because they can soak up the hits while your support troops take out the Expo pretty easily. I did lose in the third heat. I lost to an Expo player, top notch. I started with my Golem, I started with my Golem out of hand, and I started Ice Golem at the back, and then I misplaced, and then he instantly planted Expo, and I placed my Golem down a little bit too far back, and he logged it behind my tower, and Expo walked onto my.
Yeah, dang, that sucks.
So, and that's if Expos are able to get a lock on like that, like I was down 10 elixir, and I wasn't able to stop the Expo because my placement was pretty bad. Okay. So it was kind of fluky that I lost, but I mean, I got my revenge. I beat Top Notch 2-0 later on.
Yeah. Did you see a lot of people like at the start? I don't know if that's just my match, but I noticed like people just do not want to place the first card down. I think it's like you're at a disadvantage if you start first, because usually if you have a bad hand right at the start, you have to be on the defense. You really can't, go offensively with your bad hand.
Yes, so both of my decks kind of they have cards that you're capable of playing without overcommitting. Like you never want to start off with your tank. Starting off with your tank is a bad idea because you're going to get counter pushed in the opposite lane. Like if I drop Golem at the back at the start of the match, they're instantly going to, or at least they should. This is what I do. They should instantly drop their win condition in the opposite lane and rush the tower.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Like that's how you beat these Golem decks. But I'm guessing the more experienced and advanced players were not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. I will never do that to start a game. To start a game with my Golem deck, I always either put down a Tombstone in the middle or I put Ice Golem at the back. both of which are low cost things that are advantageous because you can play to them. Like you can play archers behind Ice Golem to get some chip damage on the tower, or you can pull their troop with your tombstone when they play it.
Okay, so then when exactly do you know, now is the time I can play these cards? Because you have to wait until maybe your tombstone rotates again to where the golem is in your deck as well, right?
Okay, so the primary thing when you're using golem is its biggest weakness is that it costs 8 elixir, of course. So and it's really slow. So you're vulnerable to quick pushes. So what you do when you're playing a golem, you obviously double elixir helped a lot because you get to recover faster and you can defend like cheap pushes. But what you do with golem is that you wait until their win condition is already on the field or has it been played and is out of rotation. So like say they have a giant, a hog, a lava hound, you either you play if they played in the back, you can just play your golem because you're both down like the same amount of elixir. But you wait for them to play it, especially for like hogs. This works well when they rush you, and then you defend with like tombstone or whatever, and then you play their golem. And so what happens is they can't attack you because their win condition is out of rotation.
Right.
So this is what golem players do, and what they have to do instead of attacking, because if they did attack, they would be like throwing archers or a mega minion at a tower, which is bad, by themselves anyway. So they have to play their defensive troops at the back, and this is what golem excels at, is attacking and building up a huge push, because golem can always tank enough for your support troops to overwhelm their tower and their support troops. So you get this big push going, and they can't do anything to counter. They have to defend, and golem always wins in that situation. So that's how you win with golem, is you get those big pushes built up.
So, well, I've noticed in the tournament, a lot of players were actually playing their golem right on the river, right at the edge. So I would think, by doing that, they would be at a disadvantage, but somehow that makes the other player go on the defensive. Or is it some strategy that helps your momentum?
Okay, so yeah, this is also like a very good strategy with golem. Essentially, when you get to double elixir, you recover elixir fast enough for that to be useful. If you put a golem at the bridge before double elixir time, you're never going to get elixir back fast enough to help the golem, because golem can't do much by itself because it's going to get pulled by like a tombstone. Like if a golem is by itself, like a tombstone and like archers can take it out without it ever getting to the tower. But the strength, obviously, it takes so long to kill the golem. So in double elixir, when you can actually support it, it's good. It is good to put it at the bridge, especially when they have like a counter push going, because your golem will soak up everything, while your support troops can kill like their golem or whatever. So it's good once you're in double elixir. Before then, you should never play the golem at the front. But once it's double elixir, or once they have a tower down, then it's good to do it.
So I actually want to come back to your knowledge about the game and about your decks. But first, I want to ask you some other questions for beginner players. To help people that did not make it to the tournament. I know there's a lot of people where they suffer with confidence issues. They're afraid to be on stage. They feel like they'll probably be too nervous and their hands will be shaking to even play. Maybe you could tell us, how was your training schedule? How did you feel when you were on stage? And maybe you can give us some tips, what to do if we ever in that situation.
So, like I said, I was really just happy to have made it that far, and you got a decent amount of money just for making it into the top 8 players, and then you got to play a YouTuber. So that was obviously, that alone was like a huge accomplishment. But what I told myself every time I went up to play is that you've already made it this far, and now you have nothing to lose. You just go out and you play your absolute best. And I will say that I was surprised that I wasn't that I performed as well as I did. I didn't really make that many mistakes, which I was kind of surprised, because we had to play on a separate device from our own that they provided, and it was a tablet, and I play on my phone.
Oh yeah, it was. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
it wasn't even an iPad.
Yes, so that was a pretty big disadvantage because I play on my iPhone, so they had us play on a tablet.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a huge change then if you're playing on a bigger screen.
Yeah, so that was different. I had to use my index fingers instead of my thumbs, but I was practicing a little bit before, like on my phone. There were cameras and there were lights, but really I just went up there and I focused on the gameplay. I acted as if I was at home. And some people like mocked me for it because I looked so serious, but I was like, there's money on the line, and I
Hell yeah.
I mean I'm having fun being competitive. That's how I go in games. So
I put on my mask. I didn't want to lose that money.
yeah, man.
I
I
I
was up there
tried to
playing.
my burglar skills. I tried to bring that into the game, and man, I guess the other guy was hungry. We had a lot of killers at the tournament. These guys were really hungry for the wins. So now I want to ask you just a few more questions. Tips. I think a lot of people are interested in advanced tips. Maybe you can give us some tips that you know that maybe a lot of people don't know about the game.
Yeah, so it really depends on the situation, and you have to know your deck. So say you've already done a decent amount of damage, and because you'll see me do this, and I actually got called like a wuss a bunch for doing this. But if you know your deck and you have like a heavy spell such as lightning or rocket or fireball, and you get their tower really low, you have absolutely no reason whatsoever to try to attack with your troops anymore. What you should do is you should play defense. You should only defend their attacks, and you should just spell their tower to death. Once it's like, say you get their tower down to like 500 HP, you should just like run out the time and just fireball every rotation, because you always gain elixir when you're defending, because defending is obviously you have the tower to assist. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so but as far as like just throwing out troops when maybe the game's a little bit closer, you should never just like throw everything out and hope for the best, because if they play good defense, that's never going to work. You should always be
Mm.
methodical, and even when time's almost out, because you have overtime, unless like they've got your tower way too low, you should always kind of be like careful about your pushes, especially like if it's a tank deck. You can still slow push, you don't have to rush. Especially if they have like Inferno, you never want to rush when someone has Inferno. You want to build up a push and be able to lightning it.
Wow. Okay, that's good. Let's talk about the deck. The golem. It seems like the golem and the tombstone deck is. If you just look on the game, a lot of people are using that deck. Do
Yeah.
you think what is it with these really good decks that people discover and then all of a sudden they're no good anymore? What goes on there?
So it typically has to do with the patches and like the balance changes, and eventually people figure them out and figure out what's the absolute best. Like for example, right now you have to play beatdown, which is like tanks, giant, and golem is obviously the best right now. Which for like 2 weeks after this patch, people didn't realize that, and now people are finding all these different golem decks because giant was nerfed so hard, Inferno was nerfed so hard, that it makes one deck superior. Sort of like in the
Mhm.
past, it was like it was giant poison. So people find out what's the best, and it's either easier to use that deck or that deck is just superior. So you're gonna see people spam it because people always want to use what's best because that's what you win with. Also with like beatdowns, it pushes out siege decks obviously, because beatdown decks, the tanks counter expo really hard. So that's why people don't run towers
Yeah,
as much.
yeah, that's true. So tell me what decks do you want to see nerfed? Or what cards exactly do you want to see
Hmm.
changed or nerfed? Because I mean, the golem is strong. I just looked at this guy. He's gonna get to the tower if you have no defense, and he
Yeah.
could blow up troops in the air. Like minions, they take damage from that guy too. So I
Yeah,
mean,
that change in particular is what pushed him over the edge. That and the Inferno nerf. I really don't understand why Inferno was nerfed. I'm a beatdown player, so I can't complain about this meta because it's like what I like to play. But I would say revert the Inferno nerf or give it an alternative to killing tanks. Like Inferno Dragon maybe should be buffed. I don't know. Yeah, I really don't understand why they nerfed Inferno, because tanks were already in the meta and they just made them absolutely dominant.
yeah,
Or maybe give a little bit of a nerf to the Golem. The Giant is pretty good right now. I just don't understand why the Inferno was nerfed. Also, Mega Minion is absolutely necessary in almost every single deck. Like it should be nerfed. Either it should be like fireballable, or it should be do a little bit less damage.
yeah. Yeah. A lot of people actually mentioned the Mega Minion was pretty OP.
Yeah,
How do you
it's like
feel
all
about
yeah.
how do you feel about Lightning Spell?
So I put it down as my favorite card, and one of my decks don't use
Everyone
it.
has that card in their deck.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's a result of the beatdown meta to where it absolutely destroys all these cards that are good at killing tanks, like Mega Minion, Musketeer, Ice Wizard. It nearly kills the Inferno Dragon. It leaves it with like a sliver of health, and it also kills every defensive building essentially, especially the Inferno, and it resets the Inferno now. I started using it the instant they changed it to where it resets Inferno because I'm a beatdown
Yeah.
player.
Whoa.
So it gives too much value if you can catch more than like one unit with it, and oftentimes in beatdown decks themselves use these units a lot. So it's a really good counter to those units, and it also does a bunch of damage to tower. So
Yeah, yeah. Would you say your deck that you're using right now is viable enough so that you can make mistakes, or is it just one mistake and you can throw in the towel? How does your deck how can you recover from mistakes with your deck?
so I would say the Golem deck in particular. The other one you probably have to be a little bit more careful and play better defense. My giant deck, that is. With the Golem deck, I would say you are afforded mistakes. Obviously, if you're playing against like someone of equal skill level, any mistake is going to be well. If you play like a really good player, any mistake is going to be punished because that's what good players do. But as far as the Golem, it excels in double elixir because it lets you build up these big pushes. Because a lot of like there are chip decks to where they slowly whittle down your tower throughout the match, but a Golem can take your tower all in one go. So if you make a mistake, sometimes it's okay if you're able to build up a big push at the end of the game. And then Golem also kind of excels when one tower is down because you can place it right next to the tower and then attack.
Right. Yeah, that is true, man. So I have two last questions for you. What is your MVP card, and what will you do now that the King's Cup is over?
Hmm. I would have to say that my MVP card was probably Graveyard because it synergized really well with my Golem deck, and I was able to use it to get a ton of damage. Uh, so typical Golem decks use Lightning to get the Golem to the tower, and that deck you're actually kind of deceptive because you really don't care if the Golem gets to the tower. You let their defense distract it, and you let them play their defensive troops on the Golem, and then you activate Graveyard. And while the Golem is off to the side tanking, the Graveyard does all the damage for you. So
Yeah, I've seen that, but I don't know. Like a lot of people have found ways to combat that. I think it's like they put three minions in, or a minion card in the air, or an archer card, and those by themselves can pretty much defend the tower.
yeah, the trick to with archers is to zap them, and then the Graveyard will quickly kill them as they're stunned.
Hmm.
But for minions, that is a very good counter. When I know the opponent is playing minions, you can also trick them into thinking you're going to play Graveyard, and you just hold it until they use their minions, or you just go and attack without the Graveyard because you can just hold the Graveyard and use a normal Golem push. So
Hmm.
that's what I do in those situations.
That's another thing I wanted to mention. I wanted to talk to you. The last question here. I wanted to talk to you about your last match
Mm.
with Yao Yao. Could you give us some more insight about that match? Maybe there were some mind games that we didn't quite see while we were watching it that you were having to deal with while you're playing him. And I think we actually talked about counting elixir. Uh, you said you had like kind of a guess for it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if the other player that you're playing against actually does count elixir,
hmm
your elixir, and he knows, how much you're spending, and if it actually is that advanced in the game that you guys are playing with the decks.
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure, but I was told that, and I know as far he's like sponsored, so it's essentially like his job to come in and play these tournaments and do well, and that he practices a lot. And I could definitely see that if you practice all day, that that's something you'd be able. That's definitely a learnable skill that would help you play. So as far as like elixir goes, though, when he drops like a golem, I know that costs 8. Like I have every card memorized. I know what every card costs, and I know how to punish it. Um, so to have an exact science of like how much elixir they currently have in their hand, I probably can't like pinpoint that, but I have a really good feel for like how many units are they going to be able to play, and especially it's during a game, your cards rotate, so they get into kind of a rhythm. So that's something I understand as well. But as far as like the matches went, I would say just Golem in general is really strong right now, and I think I got kind of unlucky, but also he's just an amazing player, and he's a really good Golem player, and respect to him for
Mm-hmm.
that. Um,
Yeah, respect. Yeah.
so the only game I did, well, he was undefeated coming into it, and I did take a game off of him, but it was also using Golem, so that was kind of funny. Um, but my second game, I believe, I played Royal Giant. as a counter to Golem. I was gonna like hard push the opposite lane whenever I saw him drop Golem.
Yeah, wow, that it would have worked, but what happened there? How come it didn't work?
He ran Lava Hound that game.
Oh,
uh,
so that's
I
why
was
air.
expecting Golem, and I didn't have good air counters, and which is unfortunate because my giant deck has arrows as well as lightning in it, so it's a really good counter to air. So it would have been fortunate if I had gotten to play my giant deck against that. But I mean, look, I mean, I got a little bit unlucky there, but also
Mhm.
at the very last match, I could have beaten him. I made a couple misplays towards the end, but just in general, like I didn't ever make like a misplay where I just gave up in a tower away. It was just like I was slightly off my placement and my troop aggroed to the wrong thing or something. Maybe one time. That's all it took because I mean I do the
Yeah,
same thing when I play against people. I'd say when you play better players, they're gonna punish you for any mistake. So
yeah.
very good player.
Um, so do you have any last advice for people like that, if they're playing in tournaments and they lose, how do you recover from that? What do you do? Do you just train harder, or do you just try and look at the replays and see what you did wrong? What advice can you give us?
For sure, it's good to look at replays and to understand your mistakes so you don't make them again and make like a conscious effort to understand what you're doing wrong and what you should have done. But also just playing and the mentality I have, especially going to those tournaments, and something I told myself before every single game was anyone can beat you and you can beat anyone. So never get intimidated by anyone you're playing. If you notice that recognize their name or anything, even if you're like playing against me, uh, and just understand that you also should never underestimate someone. And that's what I told myself every game. And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've done that,
yeah,
man. You lose when you do
yeah, like
that.
if I was playing someone low in trophies, I wouldn't assume they were bad or low in like cups in a tournament. I never assume they're bad. You should always play your absolute best and expect anything because that's how you screw yourself in tournaments, especially where they have like the point system when you're playing earlier to qualify for those tournaments. You have to make sure every game counts. You can't give up in any game, and you can't expect to win any game because that's how you lose.
I agree. Hey, thank you, Colton, for coming on and giving us some advice and some tips. And hopefully, we see you again in some more international tournaments or even online. We might be lucky to see you there as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be competing in both, so should see me around. We'll see.
All right, then, man. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.